Hi, I'm Dan Kreiness, host of the Leader of Learning podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And I'm just really excited, guys. It's Saturday morning. It's time for a little bit of coffee. It's time for just a breakfast, enjoying the day. I'm ready to go here as we're getting ready to interview an amazing guest. But thank you guys, first and foremost, for all your show support and supporting my EdTech life, and also for always staying techie, my friends. And today, I'm just thrilled and I'm really, really excited, to have this amazing guest. And I know I always say all guests are amazing because they all are. But today it's one of those conversations that I've been wanting to have with Jillian DuBois, who is joining us here all the way from Tampa in that area. So I'm just really excited that she is here with us today. And I hope that you guys really get to know Jillian and her heart. And it's going to be an amazing conversation because she has an amazing heart. She's an educator, 20 years in the business. She has her own LLC, Imparted Joy, and we'll talk about all of that in just a second. But Jillian, thank you so, so much for being here with us today. I'm really excited to get to chat with you today. How are you doing today?
I am awesome. So my face is already hurting from smiling so much because we had a little pre-conversation before and we're both just like, we can't stop smiling. And I love that intro, by the way. I've seen it like once, but now seeing it and I'm like the whole Rio Grande thing. I'm like, I just love it.
Yes, thank you. And that was so cool. Like we got to talk, and he's like, hey, I used to go to South Padre Island and go. I was like, hey, that's around my neck of the woods. So that is so cool. That connection to Texas is there. So that's wonderful. So Jillian, tell us, how are you doing today?
I am super excited because I have exactly 3.5 days left of school with my students.
Wow.
So I just had my last Friday yesterday. So when I woke up this morning, I'm like, I can do this. I can do it. I'm ready. It's hard. I'm like, my kids are my kids. They're my family and they know it. That's the way we set everything up. I create that culture in the beginning of the year with my kids that, hey, you may not like this person. You may not like this person. You don't want to eat lunch with them or play on the playground with them, but we are family. And family stays together. So this whole year, and this time of the year, we're like brothers and sisters that argue and fight all the time. So, okay, you go to your corner, you go to your corner. But it's been great. So I hate to let them go. It's always so hard as an educator to watch them, take their wings and fly away.
Oh my goodness. Yes. No, I totally hear you. And I was sharing that with you backstage, here in our school district. It's elementary is pre-K through 6th, and being a 6th grade teacher, it's like, oh my goodness, I'm not going to see my kids anymore, because you see them even though you've only had them for 6th grade, but you see them around the halls, sometimes since they were there from pre-K or 1st grade, 2nd grade, whenever they come into the district or into the school. And then junior high, they go to a completely different campus. And it's like, you just, you, like you said, you build that family, that relationship, those strong ties. And then all of a sudden it's like, you're watching them grow up and they go to a different campus and you're like, it was some of the most difficult things for me to see.
Definitely. And it's nice when they can come back and, they'll circle back around or they'll poke their head in, and give me a wave or whatever. But yeah, sometimes I don't even recognize them when they get into like 5th and 6th grade. I'm like, oh, who was that again? They're 2nd grade when I have them, but they change and evolve so much by the time they get to that age.
Oh yeah. No, I totally get it. I've seen some that, because I started off as a high school teacher and then went down to elementary. So when I've seen some of the students that I've had in high school that are now teaching in the same school district. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like I didn't recognize them until they came up to me and say, hey, uh, Mr. Mendoza. I was like, yeah. It's like, oh, you taught me algebra. I was like, wow, like that is amazing. So yeah, they definitely, but it's so rewarding though, because you see them doing some great things and you're like, wow, this is wonderful. So it's really, really cool to see, I guess, the love and the fruit of the labor, that passion that we have for education. So that's really cool. Well,
Exactly.
Jillian, so let's talk a little bit more about your background. Like I mentioned, we talked about, you serving as an educator, but just tell us a little bit more specifically, your context and education. And if you wouldn't mind adding something here for our audience members, tell us something interesting about yourself that people may not know.
Interesting about myself. Okay, well, I've lived for 30 years in Florida, but I was a native Texan. Well, I wasn't. I don't want to say I was, because I still am. I'm a native Texan, born and raised in Dallas, Texas. And that is where my heart is. And anyone that is from Texas, Fonz, everything in Texas is bigger and better. So what we always say. I grew up on a farm, actually. When I was in high school, my parents bought a farm and we built a house on 35 acres. So I grew up around cows and chickens and fish and all kinds of stuff. So
Oh wow, that is awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. And then it's so funny that you mentioned that. I grew up on a citrus farm. That's where my dad worked. And so it was just those experiences. We didn't really have the cows or anything, but I mean, we were just, covered in citrus. I mean, it was amazing. I walk out the front door. We had the navel orange orchard right outside our front door. In our back door, we had the ruby red orchard. And so it was freshly squeezed orange juice when everything was in season, grapefruits. And then of course they would grow corn. So when that season came about, I mean, we would just, have corn all of the time. And so it was so cool just to walk out and be able to get that, fresh in the morning.
And the smell, the orange blossom smell. Oh
Yes.
my goodness. We had
Yeah.
orange trees in Florida in our first house. We had a navel tree and a grapefruit tree in our backyard. And oh my goodness, you just walk out and it's like the smell is just so fresh and so nice. So
Oh,
yeah, I get
yes.
it.
Yes, that is awesome. You're speaking Texan right there.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, my friend. Well, let's talk a little bit about education. Like you said, you're an elementary teacher. And how long have you been in education for now?
I have been in education. I'm going to say now, let's see. Yeah, it's been 20 years. I'll be in my 21st year next year. So I came into it later in my career. I started out actually working in ophthalmology. I was an ophthalmic tech for an ophthalmologist, and I loved it. But when my son was born, I stayed home. I was able to be home for 5 years that before he went to school. And when he went to school, I'm like, well, what am I going to do with my time? I need to go back to work. My husband's like, yeah, you do. So I went back to work and I started out part-time working in his school. And I thought, oh, this is fun. I started out working in the cafeteria, and then I started working in the office, and then I volunteered in his classroom. And the more I got involved in being in the classroom with students and with teachers, and I just realized that is what I want to do. My formal training was not in education, but in Florida, 20 years ago, they had a shortage of teachers. So if you had a 4-year degree, they could take that 4-year degree, and we called it, it was like a transformation to teaching type of degree. So I took 15 hours at a local community college, and they took all of my credits from my degree and combined that, and it gave me an education degree. So I jumped into the classroom with no formal training. I mean, as soon as I made that transformation, I started teaching 3rd grade. And that was, my son was actually in 1st grade at that time. So yeah, so I just jumped right in, and I loved it. But not having that training back then, and not having that internship and facilitating relationships with other teachers and educators and leaders, it was really stressful. And when I grew up, when I was in school, it was always, you sit down, you're in a desk, you get your lessons out, you do your book work, you do this, you this. Okay, we'll go to, and we didn't move around a lot. We didn't have that whole, I don't know, flexibility in our seating or in our work. And so I thought I had to be that teacher. I thought I was that, okay, everybody sit down. I'm going to teach you. Here's what you need to do. And I'm going to grade you on what you turn in. And it was very, very, I was like that author. I don't know. I don't know if that was like totally, I don't know. It was like, I wasn't that kind-hearted. I was more like, let's get through the book, please. Don't talk. Oh, no, we'll hear a conversation later. Let's just get through this lesson, So yeah, something that I wish I knew before I had started teaching was the whole growth mindset process that, and I think I've evolved since then, and I'll kind of tell you how that evolved for me, but I was so hard on myself. So if I didn't get through the textbook, if I didn't get through all the lessons, I thought I was a failure. If a student, wasn't reading at the level I thought they needed to be reading at, I thought I was a failure. So yeah, so I got very burned out very quickly. And I worked in that area until my son got into 6th grade, 7th grade. And he was a struggling student. And he has dyslexia, ADHD, OCD. He's got some issues and has always been that struggling student that never really had enough of a struggle to be considered like to have enough support behind him, formal support. So we had a lot of support at home, which thankfully I knew how to do that being a teacher and being a mom. So I gave him a lot of support at home, but it was hard. It was very hard. So when he got into middle school, our family made a decision for me to step back and to homeschool him. So he had just always been treading water. We were doing 3 and 4 hours of homework every night, getting up then early the next morning to finish it if we hadn't. And for what? For a grade, for that a boy, you did a great job. So when we expressed what we were going to do as a family, I will never forget that day. He sat down because he's a very social kid, loved his friends, did not want to be separated from them. But I remember he sat there and he just cried. And I thought he was upset about leaving school, but it was more of a relief. It was, I don't have to do this anymore. I don't have to keep climbing that ladder that I'm never going to get to the top of. Teachers that would misunderstand him or not, get his disability and his challenges. And I think it was such a fresh start for us as a family. Mm-hmm. So I homeschooled him. And as I homeschooled him, that was where my transformation came. I knew that he wasn't going to be that kid who sat down and learned out of a book. We went on field trips. We went and visited. He had a passion for horses. So we went and found a barn that he could volunteer at. And we did science. We did equine science as some of our science and zoology. And so I took all those things that he was passionate about and created curriculum for him and checked all the boxes, of course, with the state. But it was just lovely. It was for both of us. And as a family, we could travel and we could do things and we could go to, different places and visit historic monuments and learn history that way. Or, and he was so good at math. I was not. So he was teaching me math as we went along. And it was just so organically beautiful to watch him be successful in that way. And it helped me just get that kind of what I needed to be that teacher that was going to be, when I went back into the classroom after he graduated, I was a completely different person. And that was 6 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've never looked back.
That is an amazing experience, Jillian. And you hit on a lot of things there that, number one, I am a big fan of. And I'm thankful that you did have that opportunity, to be able to teach your son what it is that you needed to do. And one thing that you mentioned is like, we made sure we still checked off all the boxes in the curriculum, even though it didn't look like maybe what people think education should look like, because it's like, oh, it's got to be in the 4 walls. It's got to be in a classroom setting and so on. but you were still able to cover what you needed to cover. But I think what I got out of it is that you created a learning experience. And I think that that's something that oftentimes those experiences, maybe myself also, even coming in from a business background and very similar story, business background, transitioning, had certain credits. I didn't know how to teach. I knew the subject, like I can teach math, but it doesn't mean that I'm a great teacher. It's like, and that's something that, I've in my mind is oftentimes is, yeah, you may, have a degree in math, but can you teach math? That's something that's completely different. And so I guess like with you creating those experiences and in yourself learning to think outside the box, that growth mindset, I think that is just so wonderful, that in education, I would be thrilled to learn in that aspect. And as the years progressed, like you mentioned, I started growing and seeing, my some of my fellow teachers, the way that they would do classroom settings and being very, organic, very collaborative, and just kind of honing in those skills. And it was just an amazing experience. So I can only imagine how great the classroom experience is now that you are offering, and your kiddos just loving it because you understand what each student may need, what to look for, and you know how to improvise, adapt, and overcome when certain situations may come. And that is amazing, Jillian. That is so cool. It just really fills my heart with joy, that experience that you shared.
Yeah. So I always say my son was my biggest teacher. He was my favorite teacher because honestly, he taught me so much. I mean, everything we did was very untraditional. And that's okay. And he succeeded. And we both, I know I've had other friends that are like, oh my gosh, how can you do that? My child would be like, no way, I'm not learning from you. And I'm like, no, it's just in the way it was presented. It was never me dictating anything to him. It was allowing him to have voice and choice in what we did. So, that's what gives kids joy too, is allowing them to have those opportunities to choose what they want to do. And even in the classroom now, I have second graders that blow me away with the things that they can do when you just give them just a little bit. You give them a little bit of instruction, you give them a little bit of direction, and you take some of those ed tech tools like Book Creator or Nearpod, or something where they can take it and they can make it theirs and do it however they, whatever their strengths are. I have some kids who still like to, type everything out, and they want to, write everything, and they don't like using a microphone, and they don't like, but they like drawing, or they like grabbing images from, wherever they can to put into their projects. And it's like, so they all have these different skills that we get to the same goal, but we get there in different ways. So it's just beautiful.
Yes, you're completely speaking my language. Yeah. I love exactly everything that you mentioned. There is the way that I would model my classroom. Probably the last 5 years in the classroom before this position as an instructional software specialist, it was just creating those experiences, and like you said, finding the students' strengths and weaknesses, but still being able to get a learning artifact from them in the modality that they felt comfortable with. We've got multimodal learners, and oftentimes we just want to keep them inside one box, and this is the way it always is, and not allowing them to be creative and, express themselves and show you their learning process, their thought process, which I think is something that is incredible because, like you mentioned, oftentimes my students, and I agree with you, were my biggest teachers because I always say first period, I just introduced the tool. By fourth period, man, I looked like an expert, but because my students taught me, and I always thank them because they saw me, like, we would learning together. And I think that that's something that's very important, building those relationships and having that kind of culture and climate within your classroom. Oh, it goes a long, long way. So that is awesome. Oh my goodness, Jillian. So excited. So now let's talk a little bit here, maybe along the way, you've been in education for 20 years. I'd say now you came back into, going into the classroom, and then of course doing the homeschooling. But what were some of the things that might have come up as far as maybe a mistake or failure that you experienced maybe during this time or currently? And what did you learn from it? How has that made you maybe a better teacher now, you know?
So, yeah. So, coming back into the classroom back 6 years ago, I remember I still had a little bit of that. Okay, I'm back in a traditional classroom, so I need to do this way. So, one of the things I will never forget doing, I had the kids they had to bring in a spiral notebook, and every morning I'd give them a prompt and they'd have to write to this prompt, right? And I had some kids who they just could not think that early in the morning, or it was, morning work. Oh no, not this again. I'm like, nope, you guys get it down. Just write, even if it's just a sentence, you can do this. And I realized that it wasn't serving a purpose. And it was just like, and I realized when I'd go back and kind of look at their work after a while, I'm like, their heart's not in it. And maybe I'm not, maybe I need to help facilitate this a little bit more. So I remember switching we're a one-to-one iPad school, which is fantastic. And I love that. And I'm not 100% tech, right? I'm still a little old school with the pencil and paper, but I will never forget, we have smart boards in our classroom, and we have some smart technology, and it's called Shout It Out. So on their iPad, I would give them the same prompt, and they have these little Post-it notes. So on the digital Post-it note, they would type or they could speak an answer to the prompt, and it would show up on the board immediately. And it would have their name on it. So they all got so excited to see their answers up there on the board. And they all learned from each other's answers. So rather than make it an individual pod, they're right here and they're just writing in their journal and they're putting it away, they're sharing it with everybody else. And it's right there on a board. Everybody's going to see it. So it holds them accountable to what they're answering, but it also stretches their thinking and their curiosity and their wonder a little bit, because that's, oh, they said this. Yeah. Well, can I type another one? I'm like, yeah, you've got 3 Post-it notes. So, and it ends up the whole board is just, smash covered with Post-it notes. But it's beautiful. And we still do that now. We spend the first 10 minutes of every morning doing that. And it's been such a growth experience to watch how they evolve as writers from maybe just 1 or 2 words to now their Post-it note is filled with, 2 or 3 sentences. So that was a failure that I kind of learned from, and I get so much joy from, and they do too. So they're proud of themselves, they're proud of their work, and their confidence is, has been built. So it doesn't always have to be, write everything down in a journal, because that's just, we got to use what we have and, go with the flow and move with the times. So yeah, so that's what I've learned. I've learned how to kind of move along with things as they're growing and move along with the kids too.
Oh, I love that, because like you said, it just helps them interact. And oftentimes, like you said, in a traditional setting, and I've mentioned this in other programs and even with some other professional colleagues. And, when you're in the classroom, it's like, maybe being out of the classroom, doing virtual and then coming back to the classroom, it's like muscle memory. It's like you're back to like your comfort zone. So all of a sudden the tech gets put away, here are the handouts, and let's get back into our rows and so on and so forth. But I love the fact that you're giving the students the opportunity to learn from one another. And I think that's very important as peer review, just getting those ideas going on a different way, their thought process, and seeing things through a different lens. And that's such an important lesson, even as a young, even a second grader, being able to see things through a different lens and being able to just be excited about that learning. And that's something that is amazing and wonderful. So I would be excited to be in your second grade classroom, being able to do these activities, that is great. So now let's talk a little bit about writing, and the reason that this kind of leads me to your book. I want to talk about Liv's Seashells. This is something that, I know I followed you for a while, and, book came out, and the way that you speak about it, the story behind it, it really does resonate. And it's so something that's so heartwarming, touching, inspiring in so many ways. So if you don't mind, for our audience members that may have not heard of the book yet, tell us a little bit about your inspiration to become an author and illustrator of this children's book. What's the story behind it?
I would love to share that story because it's a story from my heart too. So, I love teaching writing. So that's one of the things, like I think it's one of my stronger things in teaching students, because I don't really even have a very organized strategy to teach them. I just say, you just think about what is important to you, what you love, and you just start. And they were always like, well, what have you written? Have you written a book? And I'm like, no, I haven't. And that got me thinking. And last year we had so much extra time when we were home. I kind of thought, all right, I'm going to take my own advice and my own teaching instruction and think, what is important to me? What is on my heart? And so that led me to write Live Seashells. And I did the illustrations as well. I love to draw. I love to paint. I love to do all those kind of things. And I have found amazing ways that are not traditional paints and paintbrushes. There are just crazy digital things out there. So I do everything digitally. But anyway, so my story, I sat down and I just thought, I'm just going to write it. I'm just going to write what was really important to me. And it took me 2 days. And I remember letting my husband read it, and he's like, where did this come from? I'm like, it's the story. It's the story of my sister. So my sister was just one of those gentle, compassionate souls that loved people, more so than I did. I was a little bit more of the, I wanted to be popular, and I was kind of judgmental and, no, you can't be my friend. But my sister was the complete opposite when she was growing up. She was like, oh, you don't have any friends? Come on, you're my friend now. Or, this happened to you. Oh my goodness. Well, let me show you, how you can get through that. And she was just that compassionate soul and spirit that just picked everybody up where they were. And she knew how to speak truth and life into them. So it just I wanted to kind of parallel her story, because she passed away when she was 40 from cancer. And she left behind a daughter who was 7 and a son who was 9. And I remember after she passed away thinking, there's still so much more to her life that her kids need to know, that her kids, didn't have, especially her daughter, my niece, Kaylee, who is 7, she's like, didn't have that memory of her mom. It kind of like got a little fuzzy, and my mom, her mom had been sick for a while. So I'm like, how can I make this something, for them, really? So I sat down and I thought, okay, well, we both loved the beach. We both loved the ocean and seashells. And so I kind of made it to where Liv is this character in this story. And my sister's name was Lisa. And Lisa's seashells was a tongue twister. So I had to change it to Liv, because Lisa lives through Liv. And Liv would pick up the seashells on the beach. She would collect all the ones that needed attention, that were broken or chipped or lost their color and just were not very beautiful, that people would step on or pass over. And that kind of paralleled Lisa's life too. She kind of just collected those things that were broken. So, and took them into her care. And Liv would just wash them and just make them just feel so comfortable and so loved. And she kept them next to her nightstand where they could just flourish next to her. So just kind of like, that's the story. It was kind of, my sister was that person who just had a heart of gold and a heart for other people. So the interesting thing is, you never know the impact that your own personal story is going to have on somebody. And I thought, for me, it's just a story. It's my heart story, but it was for my niece and my nephew. But when my niece took it to her best friends, and she's now 16, she took it to her best friends, and her best friends were like reading it with their parents, and they were like, oh my goodness, Kaylee, this is you. You are your mom, so it had that impact on my niece, that people were able to read this story about her mom and go, you're just like your mom. So that, has just been an incredible story, an incredible joy. I've also had the opportunity to share it with my students and parents and families. And I had one little girl in my class, makes me tear up, who did not speak at the beginning of the year. Very quiet, just would not say a word. I'd ask a question and I could just tell I couldn't call on her because it would embarrass her. So just kind of let her, be quiet. I'd try and just kind of encourage her and coax her out of, her shell every once in a while, and she'd smile but she'd put her head back down. And I will never forget, after I read this story, she came in with the book she had ordered on Amazon, and she came in with it, and she brought in a seashell that was broken. And she brought in the book, and she came right up to me and she said, "Mrs. DuBois, would you sign my book? And I want to give you my seashell." And she brought me her broken seashell, and I said, "Oh my goodness, this is yours. Do you want to keep it?" She goes, "No, it's for you." And I said, "Thank you." So I signed her book, crying, of course, and just realized that was just that little moment was an incredible breakthrough with a student who you just never know what impact your story is going to have on somebody. The rest of the year, I have watched her grow and speak and be more confident, and I've been able to love on her, and she's a different person. So I don't know if that was just the seed of the story or what it was, but it has encouraged me to keep writing. So this is not just a one and done story. Liv will have more adventures and more stories and messages to share. But if I had any encouragement for anybody who wants to write and is like, "No, I'm afraid. I don't want to be that vulnerable." Yeah, you need to. It's a great way to share your story, because I never would have had the courage to speak it. But now, since I've written it, now I love speaking it and I love sharing it. And I know that it's reaching other people. And I don't care about how many copies are sold. I don't care about the money it makes. It's just, I know that message is traveling. And every time I see somebody post a picture and they're like, "My book came today," I'm like, "Yes, it made it to Canada. It made it to Australia. It made it to, England." I'm like, all these places. And there's just nothing like that. It just fills my heart. So yeah. So yes, you can do it. You can just sit down, knock it out. Your words don't have to be perfect. But your message is perfect.
Wow. Oh my goodness. That is such an amazing story, Jillian. And I'm just,
Sorry.
yeah, but it's just great because it just really does resonate. And it just, what I love is that, just it shows your heart, your passion, and the impact that this story not only is having with your second grader, but with your niece. And now the story is being read around the world, and it's touching hearts. And so one thing that I love that you mentioned is everybody has a story, and we can all learn from one another, all of our experiences. Some may parallel, some may not, but there's power in somebody's story, because it can help you when you may find yourself in that situation. You can revert back to what that person said, what that person shared, their experience, to help you overcome, in this case, the loss of your sister, and you being able to keep her memory alive. And it was just so beautiful to be able to hear um, that portion, that part where your niece's friends, read the book with the parents and said, this is you, this is who you are, you're the same person. And just to keep that memory alive is something that is amazing. And I thank you so much for sharing that, and putting yourself out there, and being vulnerable in that sense. And I think it is important. Sometimes we, as teachers or educators, or even just as a person, we find it difficult to put ourselves out there and seem vulnerable, because we want to be strong and we want to seem like we have it together, but we really don't. Maybe more often than not, we probably don't have it together as we do, but it's okay. we're only human. We are only human. So I mean, this has definitely had an impact on me, and just having this conversation too with you as well, as it resonates in a sense through my wife, and in her losing her mom at an early age, at the age of 13, and being able to just talk to my wife. And because I still have both my parents. My mom just turned to 76. My dad's going to turn 85 this year in October. And so my wife, in talking to her, she has really just taken like just this extreme love of my mom, because she, like I said, she lost her mom at the age of 13. But when I hear her talk about her, the way that my mother-in-law would have been, I was like, wow, like she sounds like such an amazing woman. And the what she shared, the passion, the love, and everything. And I can often probably say, like, I can see it through you. The way that you describe her is the way that you are. And so it's just amazing, and I love it. And I'm so thankful for your heart. I'm so thankful for you as an educator to have that heart and bring that into your classroom and to share with people. And of course, the courage that you have to put yourself out there, it really means a lot to me. And it does inspire me. And I know that it will inspire so many more people as well. So you keep doing what you do, Miss Jillian, because it just makes me happy, and it really puts joy in my heart. Right now, my heart, it feels filled, and I'm just like, oh, I'm so excited. Like, it's so cool. So thank you so much for what you do.
Oh, mine too. No, I don't know. I love sharing. I think, like we mentioned earlier, even our relationships with our students, I think relationships with each other as colleagues and peers as adults, that's so important. And that's truly what has inspired so many of the things that have led me to where I am today. Jumping into Twitter a year ago, I'm celebrating my year anniversary on Twitter, like in the edu Twitter space this month. And I'm like, a year ago, I didn't have this group of people. I didn't have this support system. I didn't have these best friends. And yeah, I call them best friends, that just allow that growth and that support and that encouragement, that all you have to do is just jump on and just look at what everybody is saying. And I don't know, it's beautiful. It's beautiful when you can connect, and you connect with those people who are like-minded and have similar heartfelt sentiments that you do.
Yeah.
So.
And I love that, because that was kind of my next question. It's like, what opportunities have come from putting yourself out there? And, like you said, just a year in Twitter, and the connections that you've made. And for myself, I love to call it my PLF, my personal learning family, because every person that I connect with, much like you, like, all has a story, and I'm like, wow, I want to learn more about them. I want to learn what they've done, and for me, it's just a growth process, and this is my passion project. For me, is just to connect educators, creators, one show at a time, and but for yourself, how has that, putting yourself out there, not so much on social media up until last year, how has that, if you can go in a little bit more, how has that transformed you as a person as well as an educator?
Yeah, I think it has just, and I will be completely honest, like I am a social introvert. Like I am drained if I am in a large setting with a bunch of people, and, even coming home from school where I've had to talk all day and I've had to be, on. When I come home, I mean, I'm just like, whew. But there's something about that digital connection and that virtual connection with people that I never had before this year. And it has allowed me to be more social and to not be so afraid of what I perceive people think about me. I call myself a recovering overthinker. So I've let go of so many of those things, and I've really learned to be myself. I've really learned to show people, this is me. If you don't like me, that's okay. But it's also allowed me to take everything that I've been encouraged with and supported in, and I've grown it by creating my own little company, my own little LLC to publish and to help others spark their stories. This summer, I'm going to be working hopefully on helping other people. If you want to know how to write, how did I get started? If you want to hear the whole process, I can help walk you through it. I would love to do that for people. I call it Spark Your Story sessions. So, where we just brainstorm together and we just talk. What is it that's important to you? What's on your heart? Let's come together. And I'd love to just, make that real for you. Or read aloud to other classrooms, or I'm enjoying I kind of started creating graphic design things for other people. Whenever I see somebody's quote and I feel like, oh man, that just hit me right in the heart, I want to put it out there. So I love, these different things like Canva and Adobe that can, help us to be so creative and to help, help other people explore what they want to do too. So I never would have done that. I think it's given me courage. It's given me strength, but still have that connection with people and relationships to make all this happen and all this happen together. So it's just incredible. I feel so blessed.
Oh no, I feel blessed too. Like I said, when I first saw you and heard about you and then the story and then just following you on Twitter, like I love I follow you on Facebook also as well, and there's always that. I have my personal and then of course my professional, but I think I have you on my personal, and I love it because it's just so inspiring in the morning too. It's like, all right, I'm always going to find something that is going to be inspiring and help me put a smile on my face and just to start the day off on a good note. So I'm really excited that I've connected with you because you definitely, always, it's the timing is always right. When I'm flipping and looking through, I'm like, oh, like, man, like Jillian knows, like she knows. So that is so cool. Well, I'm really excited. Now, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this, and I know we talked about it, prior to the show, but let's talk just the little spark sessions that you said. I think that is something really cool that I've never heard anybody else do, for that matter. Usually I always thought like, it's like you have to have your book written before you submit it, and so it's kind of like, well, who can I ask for help? So, if anybody that's listening or watching the show, I did put in your link to the website. Would that be the best way that they can reach you for these sessions?
Yeah, that would be the best way. You can connect with me right from there from impartedjoy.com.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to chat with you. It's, the whole Spark Your Story sessions came from when Darren Peppard and I had read his book, A Road to Awesome, that he published through Codebreaker. And I loved it. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm like, and it came at a time, it was back in January, and I'll never forget. It was kind of around the whole time when our country was going through the whole change in the presidency, and things were just kind of like stressful. And I remember just telling my kids, you know what, guys, we need to find our own road to awesome. So I took a day, and again, I think it was like 3:00 in the morning, and I just recorded down all my thoughts. I wrote this little short story based on the road to awesome that Darren had done. And I shared it with my kids the next day, and we all created our own roads to awesome. And it was like, all right, I got to share this with Darren. I'm like, Darren, we need to do this for kids. I mean, kids need to know that there's a road to awesome too. And let's get it out there. They're young. They get it. And I even had one of my students that went, yeah, it's really not a road. It's really what's in your heart. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly it. So I have that one too. So when Darren and I talked, it was kind of like one of those Spark Your Story sessions. We just kind of like said, well, let's do this. And what do you think about this? And how about this? And we could name him this. And, oh yeah, he could take this, and it doesn't have, and we just had that creative brainstorm session that just was like, this is it. And then we published that through Road to Awesome. So it's just those things that if you want somebody to just shoot ideas with, or, I can help walk you through the journey. It's just, it's what I want to do. I want to help people. And if it's especially with children's books, I think as teachers of younger students, older students, students need to see our hearts. And whether it's through a children's book or a story or a short story or Google Slides, however you want to present it, we need to get that out there for them. So.
Oh, that is great. I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. So I did share the link, and they will be on the show notes as well. But let me ask you a question here too. I will kind of change it, as we kind of start wrapping up and so on. But right now, what's been the biggest challenge that you're facing, or right now? What's the biggest challenge facing you right now? I should say. Yeah.
Biggest challenge facing me right now, and it's funny because I have a blog, and I blog every once in a while, but this is actually the next thing that's in my head and my heart that I'm going to be blogging about. But it's reframing being misunderstood. And I've just in the past several months, there have been some circumstances where I have been misunderstood, and we've all been there. We've all felt like, no, this is not what I meant. This is not, you're taking this wrong. You're judging me for something that maybe was misperceived. And it's hard. It hurts. So I've worked through that, reframing that misunderstanding and reframing it to, how can I learn from this? There's two sides to every story. And while I think I'm being completely misunderstood, there were some elements to it to where, no, I did contribute to the situation. So, you have to reflect, and you have to be willing to look at yourself and be honest with yourself and go, okay, I wasn't completely in the right here. Yes, I was misunderstood, but I'm going to take that and I'm going to change it, and I'm going to frame it in the right direction to where it will put me on the right path. Because we do have that path. We can choose. We can go left. We can go right. We have a choice, and how we take that choice and how we diverge on those roads makes a difference.
Oh, great. Well, that's wonderful. I'm looking forward to reading that. And of course, again, it's your experience, you're sharing it. And I know that it'll definitely be helpful to many other people, although they may not be going through it right now in the situation, but it happens. I think I always tell everybody, say the worst thing that you can say is it'll never happen to me, but always be ready, and, definitely looking forward to that. So let's lighten it up a little bit here. And here you go. If you could have a billboard with anything on it, Jillian, what would it be and why?
Oh my goodness. I just 3 words. Be the joy. Be the joy, with a big sunshine on it.
That is awesome. Yeah.
Because you can. I always talk about, happiness and joy are not the same thing. Happiness is just a fleeting feeling. It can come and go with external circumstances in a moment, but joy is that internal dedication to truly being intentional and disciplined with what is in your heart. So we've got it. Everybody's got it. It's just a matter of being it. So be the joy.
Oh, I love it. That's such a wonderful message. And I'm glad that you also made that distinction between happiness and joy, because oftentimes, they're used interchangeably, but it's not the same. Like you mentioned, happiness could be temporary, as maybe just your first morning cup of coffee can be happiness. But that joy is something that is there, permanently, and that it's something different there. It's what's in your heart. I love that message.
Although that cup of coffee is really full of joy.
Yeah.
Especially the second one.
The second one. Yeah. So I definitely love that. All right. So now let's see here. Now here's an interesting one here. If you can step into my shoes, what would you have asked yourself that I didn't?
What does the next 5 years look like for you?
Ah, okay. So tell us a little bit about that, Jillian. What do you think the next 5 years look like for the world of Jillian?
Okay. So I will say I've got some more books within me. So, Mel. Oh, hi. I've got some more books. They're coming. I've written several stories already. They're just sitting in my Google Drive. So it's a matter of having the time to illustrate them all and put them all out there with a special message. So writing, I'm probably teaching a few more years. I think I'm kind of like coasting to near the end of my teaching career, but there are other things on the horizon. And maybe branching out a little bit more with Imparted Joy and seeing how I can support and help others find their journey as well.
Nice. That is great.
So,
I mean,
yeah.
and I love that you said you have several stories within you. And I think, is it true? So I guess what I'm getting from you and what I'm seeing is, you wrote your first book and then all of a sudden the next one came out, working with Darren. And now you said you have more books in you. So is it really, I guess it's true what they say. It's like, your first book, although it may be difficult to get out, but after that, it just starts flowing. Is
Yeah.
that what you find?
1,000%. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, and it's like so many different areas too. It's not all, the same kind of story. So I won't give anything away, but it's just, characters and character qualities and, just thinking about what do people need to hear and what do I have in my heart still to share. So, yeah.
Oh, that is great. And if you and I could switch roles, what would you like to ask me?
Oh my goodness. Okay. When are you going to write your book?
Oh, yeah. That's definitely coming out for sure. Like, I've definitely been very inspired. I'll be honest with you. Like when I first saw what you've done and then I see, people writing, it is in the back of my mind. And I keep telling my wife, I'm going to write it. I'm going to write it. She's like, well, stop talking about it and just write it, do it. And I don't know what's been holding me back. And I think it could be, honestly, a little bit of that imposter syndrome, where I think we talked a little bit about it before the show, in that, I think a lot of people out there, they publishing great books on pedagogy and, all that. And sometimes I may feel a little, because since I didn't go through the school of education, but I was like, or will people even care? And I think that after hearing your message and just being motivated by that, it's like, it's my story. It could help somebody. It can be just that little spark of inspiration for somebody else, and maybe just not to put myself in a specific niche, but just doing it for myself and for whomever it may help. So I think that, I think that's one of the things too that has kind of held me back a bit, and being like, well, is anybody even going to care, what I have to say? I'll be honest with you there. I think that's the first time I've actually voiced that, but
I'm so glad. So that's exactly, I mean, it's more of, it's like, you said, what is what I have to say important enough for somebody to read it? And it's like, why does that matter? It's, you get your message out there, and if 5 people read it or 500 or 5,000 people read it, it's, it's your story. And the satisfaction that brings, and just that now I feel like people see me like for who I am. Like this is me. So take it or leave it, right? And that imposter syndrome tends to overshadow us for so long. But then when you realize it's just, you just keep taking those steps and doing it, and you're enough. You're enough. So do it. Yeah.
Thank you, my friend. I really appreciate that question, and really putting me on the spot there. Now I know what it feels like to be on the other side. But yeah, it's great, and I'll probably sign up for some of those sessions and bounce some ideas and things of that sort, because oftentimes it's just also finding somebody that is willing to take a chance and willing to listen, because oftentimes it's, people may look at stats like, well, this person has these many followers, this person has these many followers, so yeah, let's give them a shot, or maybe let's listen to them. But what about other people that may not have those followers but have an amazing story? So I think that too, as well, is just, that is important, having somebody that's willing to listen and give you a shot, or maybe even just help lead you and guide you in a specific direction, and that's important. So thank you. So I'm definitely going to be hitting you up for sure. So guys, please make sure that you visit here, Imparted Joy. If you go to Imparted Joy, com. You can visit Jillian's website here, where you can find out a little bit more, obviously, about our amazing guest today, Jillian, of course, and her books. Look at that. So you've got summer 2021 here, and to be determined right here as far as the date or to be released. But you've got Live Seashells, you've got Road to Awesome, a journey for kids. So guys, please make sure that you visit the website. You can contact Jill here as well. And look, even schedule a session to spark your story, guys. So all of you that are out there listening today, or maybe you're going to be rewatching or listening to this on your favorite podcast player, I hope that today you really just experience the joy that I experienced in being able to have just an amazing, genuine conversation with Jillian here, who just has this joy, and she really imparts joy. She really fills you up and has just a wonderful story. So please make sure that you follow her on her social media, on Twitter, on Instagram. Follow her or go to her webpage, and just really, she posts a lot of great stuff that sometimes it's just the right time that you read that and you're like, just needed that, little positive affirmation and that joy that she brings. So Jillian, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day today to share your story, to just make that connection with our audience members, and me being able to connect with you. And now you're part of the PLF, and anytime you want to come back, my friend, you just come back, maybe for your next book release, share those stories or any other projects. You always have an open invitation for you here on My EdTech Live.
Oh, thank you, Fonz. It was like having a conversation like with my best friend. It really was.
Thank
you.
Yes, of course. And again, for all our audience members, thank you so much for all of your support. Guess what? We hit over 3,000 listens now. And so that's been great in about a year. And so thank you so much for everybody who watches the show, who believes in my project here, my passion in just connecting educators one show at a time, showing the real educator, the person, and getting to know them, getting to know their story. I appreciate every single one of you for that. And again, visit us at myedtech.life. Make sure that you go to the reviews, give us a review. Contact us, guys. If you're interested on being a guest, contact us or just give us some feedback. We'd love to hear from you, to know what we're doing well, where we can improve, because we always want to bring you the best each and every week. So thank you guys for all of that. So again, Jillian, it's been a pleasure. I look forward to all your amazing projects and your continued success, my friend. You are amazing. Thank you so much. And guys, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate every single one of you. And until next time, my friends, stay techie.